In fourth grade, we lived a little over a half hour away from my school, and my dad, who worked in downtown San Francisco, it took him about an hour to get to where the school was, so he wouldn't be able to show up until about after 6:15 p.m. So I spent the hours between when school let out at 2:30 and 6:30 at the public library. And initially when I went there, I just was trying to find anything to do. I would do my homework, but that usually didn't take very long in fourth grade. And then I would start drawing, and then I would start looking at these big picture books of airplanes. And then from there, I started finding picture books of warplanes and tanks and ships. And then down the aisle from these books, I found the Time Life book World War II series. Now, for those who aren't familiar with it, it's a 29-volume series of almost every aspect of World War II that could ever have been imagined. And for a fourth grader, it was really cool. I would look at all the pictures and I would read the captions, and in fourth grade I wasn't really in depth yet, so I didn't read any of the text. I just gathered as much as I could about the war from these pictures and captions. And over the course of the next 5 years, I completed the series, reading all of the pictures and captions, as well as I met my first girlfriend, I had my first kiss, saw my first Playboy at the library. But the biggest thing for me was having experienced World War II through this series. And I really did it at a strategic level. The strategy of World War II was what was fascinating to me. This grand global existential conflict, pitting these massive titans against each other, duking it out, and eventually some surviving and some dying, was such a great retreat for me from what my daily life was. It was a safe place to be, because strategy to me was sterile. Strategy was inhuman. Strategy, there was no chaos in strategy. There was chaos in war, but there was no chaos in strategy. And during the time that I was going through this, my life was getting very chaotic. My dad had lost his job. We moved over an hour away from my school. We moved into a house that had no internal walls, where we didn't have a kitchen, and we washed our dishes out of the bathtub in which we showered. So there was a lot of chaos on our human element. But strategy and this war of these grand titanic powers fighting each other was safety for me. My grades really started plummeting, and by ninth grade I was averaging a 1.3 average. I was very quiet in school and getting into a lot of fights. And one day, towards the end of the year in class, in my world history class, we got to the World War II section. And the teacher started the class, but immediately I just stood up and started talking about the strategies that all of the countries in this war were using to fight each other, and how some of the strategies really went well with the economic and military might of the country, where other countries, their strategies didn't do so well, and they're the ones who ended up losing. And I hijacked the class for the entire period. Having never spoken before in that class, all of the other students just saw me and dumbfounded by this. Like, where the hell did this kid come from, and how does he know this? And most of them stayed very quiet through the course of the period. And at the end of the class, the teacher even came up to me and he said, "You know, I had no idea you knew anything." Where did you get that? I said, "I had a lot of time on my hands over the last 5 years at the public library." And he said, "That was amazing." In that year, when my report card came, I got D's and F's in every class except for world history, in which I got an A. And that was amazing to me, because I never passed any test. It was simply because of that one class that I had hijacked. But I maintained that affinity for strategy, the affinity for all things military, throughout my college and my graduate school career. I went to work for the Department of Defense thinking one day I could be the strategic thinker who, when a time of existential global conflict comes, I could be the one who says, this is how we should fight it. But the more I worked for the government, the more I realized, no, that job isn't possible. That's not for me. And honestly, it's the president who usually decides that sort of thing. And this was around 2003, and I wasn't that big of a fan of the president who was deciding that sort of thing. So I decided, okay, let me try something different. Let me go someplace new. And I got to go to Vietnam and work on humanitarian mine action issues. I got to help victims of explosive remnants of war, people who were suffering on a human level, individuals who had a story to tell about their particular experience. And what I realized is that war is not about the grand strategy at the sterile level from deciders who have absolutely no military experience. It is from the individual level. War is a tapestry woven together of millions, potentially, of stories, of experience going through trial and triumph and tragedy. And I came back realizing, shit, I had it wrong. My escape into the sterile environment of strategy took me away from being a human. Took me away from the humanity that all of life on this planet is made of in terms of our experience, in terms of history, in terms of what history means. Because history is a collection of the human story. And so from that point on, I really decided, no, I'm going to leave the government. I want to go and I want to be involved at a human level, not at this high strategic, sterile, meaningless level. And about 2 years ago, a friend of mine had invited me over for dinner, and he was touring me around his basement, and I saw a ratty, unkept, incomplete Time Life Books World War II series piled upon just a shelf that he had. And it reminded me of that period of 5 years between 4th and 9th grade where I would go to the library every day and read. So I started going to the library every day at lunch, and instead of just looking at the pictures and the captions in this book series, I started reading the text and realized that there were thousands of stories in this series, thousands of third-person tales of what was going on with individuals and their experience in this war. And what I decided to do is, instead of just leaving those in the third person, I would translate those into the first person. Yes, they would be historical fiction at this point because I couldn't interview the people, but they would be personal tales of an experience of conflict that those who are in a deciding level could not tell and could not understand. And my goal with this was to try to translate these back so that one day somebody who, based on the fact that I donated a set of these books back to a public library that didn't have them, one day some kid would come in and start reading these, and instead of just the pictures and the captions, he would read the text too. But then he might read my books, my compilations of these first-person histories. And one day that kid or that set of kids will be in a position, not in the government potentially, but anywhere, where when the next war is trying to be decided upon, if they want to go and fight it, these people will understand the utter waste that war is at the human level. And they will know it is about the fate of humanity that these people are fighting, not just some grand, sterile, strategic thought. And that, to me, was far more powerful than anything I ever could have achieved in the government. Thank you.